Hello everybody, welcome to part 2. So this very first question says, an air tanker flies over forest fires and drops water at a constant rate until its tank is empty. What is the domain and range of the function that represents the volume of water the air tanker can drop in X seconds? So one thing I just want to make sure we know, 8,000 gallons is how much the air tanker has, and it drops 400 gallons per second. Okay, so thinking about this, well, we could say f of x equals 400x. So that would be one thing. Well, thinking about it, my domain is my time, right? So I have 8,000 gallons, and it drops 400 gallons a second. So I'm just going to divide that by 400. 8,000 divided by 400 is 20 seconds. So that tells me that my domain is from 0 to 20. Okay, so that was pretty easy. So we have seconds on the side. What do you think my y value should be? Well, what other number, or what other type of number do I know? Well, I know my gallons. So I'm going to say my y value is my gallons. So my range. What do you think my lowest amount that the tanker could hold? What is the smallest amount? Well, it would be 0. So I'm going to say, yeah, it can be 0. So I'm going to put a bracket because it can be. So from 0 to, how much does it hold when it's fully full? 8,000. Okay, so pretty easy. Now I want you to go ahead and try out this first one. So it says, what are the domain and range? Write them in set builder notation and interval notation. Okay, so, well, looking at this, my domain, is there anything that I can't plug in for x? No, there's not. So I'm going to say that I have x, where x is all real numbers. And then my interval notation is from negative infinity to positive infinity. And what do we put here, brackets or parentheses? Parentheses, because it's infinity. Now my range. Is there anything that I cannot have? Well, absolute value. What does absolute value do again? It makes it where the answer is always positive. So can I have a negative y? No, I can't. So it's going to be greater than or equal to 0. So it's every positive number is possible. So in interval notation, well, I have the number 0 written, so I'm going to use 0, and it goes all the way up to positive infinity. So for the infinity side, we're going to do parentheses again. What do you think we're going to put for 0? Brackets or infinity? Or not infinity, or parentheses? We're going to do brackets. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this next one. So we have domain x. Is there anything that x cannot be for this problem? No, there's not. It's not possible. So we're going to say all real numbers. So again, negative infinity to positive infinity, and then brackets or parentheses? Parentheses. My range. Okay, so this one's a little bit harder. So what I would suggest doing is going on Desmos just to see what it would actually look like. When you go on Desmos, you're going to see that y is less than or equal to 4.5. So then my interval notation would be from negative infinity all the way until 4.5. What do you think is going to happen at 4.5? Bracket or parentheses? Bracket. What do we put on the negative infinity? Bracket or parentheses? Parentheses. Okay, so this next one, A car starts a journey with a full tank of gas. The equation y equals 16 minus 0.05x relates the number of gallons of gas y left in the tank to the number of miles the car has driven x. What are the x and y intercepts of this equation? What do they represent in this situation? Okay, so thinking about this. Well, an intercept. If I'm looking for my x-intercept, isn't that where y just equals 0? So I'm going to say 0 equals 16 minus 0.05x. So let's go ahead and solve this. We're going to subtract the 16 from both sides. So we have negative 16 equals negative 0.05x. And then we're going to divide both sides by negative 0.05. So that means that we're going to have 320 equals x. So my x-intercept is 320, comma, 0. For the other one, my y-intercept is just where x equals 0. So I have y equals 16 minus 0.05 times 0. So that just means, what's anything times 0? It's just 0. So my answer is just 16. So I have 0, comma, 16. Now what does this actually mean? 320. What does x mean again? X is your distance in miles. So I can just write off on the side, it actually just means 320 miles. 16. What does y represent? Y represents the gallons, so 16 gallons. Or within the situation, this is just saying at most your car holds 16 gallons. And the furthest that it could possibly go is 320 miles. Okay, so now what are the x and y intercepts of the graph y equals absolute value of negative 3? Okay, so we have, again, for my x-intercept, 0 equals absolute value of x minus 3. Okay, so we're going to add 3 to both sides, so we have 3 equals absolute value of x. What does absolute value do? It tells you that it's either the positive or the negative, and it'll always give you a positive answer. So x actually just equals negative 3 and positive 3. So x is 2 answers. So this is telling me that I'm going to have a U shape or a parabola. The next one, my y-intercept, well, that's everywhere that x equals 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So absolute value of 0 is just 0 again. So we just have y equals negative 3. The very last part, zeros of a function, is the input values that result in a function output of 0. Or basically, your zeros is just what is your x-intercept. So if I ever ask you or for you to find the zeros of the function, you're just telling me what's my x-intercept. Okay, so the next part. I want you to go ahead and try this one on your own. So go ahead and try it, and then we're going to check it together. Okay, so we should have gotten my x-intercept as being positive, negative 2, and then my y-intercept as being 4. So let's just talk through this one real quick just to make sure that we understand it. So for my x-intercept, I'm just plugging in 0 for y, or g of x. So I have 0 equals 4 minus x squared. I subtracted 4 from both sides. And then I had negative 4 equals negative x squared. Then I was able to divide both sides by a negative 1, so that gave me 4 equals x squared. How do you get rid of an x squared? You take the square root. So square root of 4, square root of x squared. Now, why did I put plus or minus? Well, 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is also positive 4. So that's why it's positive or negative. For my y-intercept, I just plugged in 0 for x. So I had y equals 4 minus 0 squared, and then y equals 4. Okay, now let's look at this next problem. So for this portion, we're identifying positive and negative intervals. For what interval is f of x equals x squared minus 9 positive? What intervals is it negative? The main thing to know here, if I had something that looks like this, everything that's up on top is positive. Everything that's down on the bottom is negative. So it's everything that's happening on the top. So if it's above the x-axis, it's positive. If it is below the x-axis, then it is negative. So thinking about this, we need to actually graph it. So let's go ahead and find our zeros. So find zeros. So we have 0 equals x squared minus 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. So 9 equals x squared. We're going to take the square root. So x equals plus or minus 3. Okay, and then y equals 0 squared minus 9. We're just plugging in 0 for x. So y equals negative 9. So that tells me that I'm going to put dots on the x-axis at positive 3, 1, 2, 3, and negative 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to put a dot at negative 9 on the y-axis. So right here. And then we're just going to draw a line that goes through all 3 of these points. So it'll make like a little parabola. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a rough sketch. Okay, so now positive. Positive is everything above the x-axis. So looking at this, starting off at the left, always start at the left. So looking off at the x-axis, or on the x-axis, this is above, isn't it? So we're going to say from negative infinity to, where does it hit the x-axis? It hits the x-axis at negative 3. Okay, and then what happens after that? Well, it looks like it's below the x-axis, isn't it? So it stays below, stays below, stays below. Oop, that hits right there. So we are going to put for negative, we are going from negative 3 all the way to positive 3. Now, the reason why I'm using parentheses instead of brackets, at negative 3, is it positive or is it negative? Well, it's not either. It's 0. It's at nothing, really. So we don't count that. So that's why we're not putting a bracket. Okay, and then the very last part, well, it looks like right here, we're above the x-axis again. So I'm going to write that I have, well, I'm going to put and positive 3, and then it goes off to the right for forever. So my forever number is infinity. So there you go. That's all of it. So let's go ahead and try this next one. For what intervals is h of x equals 2x plus 10 positive? Well, thinking about this, we really only need to know what our x-intercept is, right? So we're just going to put in 0 equals 2x plus 10. So we're going to subtract 10 from both sides, so negative 10 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2, so x equals negative 5. So that tells me, looking at my slope, it's positive, right? So at negative 5, we have a line that's going straight up, or not straight up, but like off to the side. Okay, so where is this thing above the x-axis? Well, it hits the x-axis right here, and then it goes up for forever. So that tells me that my positive interval is going to be from negative 5 all the way to infinity. Where is it below the x-axis? Well, starting where it hit the x-axis, we're going to go down for forever. So that tells me if I start off going off to the left for forever, what's my smallest possible number? It is negative infinity, and then it goes all the way until negative 5. Okay. Let's go ahead and try this next one. Okay, so looking at this, we're just going to pick some numbers to plug in. So thinking about my zeros, 2 would be a 0, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in negative 3. I want a different color. Okay, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So go ahead and plug those in for your x's. So we should get negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, 0, negative 1. Based off of that, we're going to go ahead and graph it. So thinking about increasing, that just means where is it going up, and decreasing is where is it going down. So it goes up from negative infinity to 0, and it goes down from 0 to infinity. Real quick, average rate of change is just your slope. So it's what we were looking for before, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then what's another name? It is the slope. Okay, so we're done with this lesson, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the next lesson on the next video.